Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session, the AICP Exam Prep and Application Tips Workshop. I hope everyone is having a wonderful NPC so far. My name is Eric Roach. I'm a program associate with the American Planning Association. I help oversee aspects of the certification process, the AICP candidate program, as well as exam prep. So first, I'm going to introduce our three presenters today. Sylvia Vargas will be providing some welcome remarks about the exam development process, and then Devin and Trevor will be going over the exam prep portion. So Sylvia has over 25 years of professional planning experience in the U.S. and abroad. She joined Calvin, Giordano & Associates Miami office as a principal planner after running her own consulting firm. Previously, she was a practice leader at a national planning and design firm for many years. Sylvia is passionate about supporting women and diversifying the planning profession. She serves on the AICP Commission and is a member of the ULI's Women's Leadership Initiative. Devin is a principal and co-founder of Lavigne Associates. He is one of the profession's top graphics professionals and is recognized for his ability to communicate plans, planning concepts, and incorporating development visualizations into the planning process. Trevor Dick is a Director of Development, Strategy, and Facilitation with the City of Aurora in Illinois. In his current role, he manages a variety of projects, including long-range planning, economic development initiatives, development project management, ordinance updates, and capital project developments. He is also the Professional Development Officer for the Illinois chapter of APA. So first, we'll kick it off to Sylvia to provide her welcome remarks. Sylvia?
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? All right. I know it's Monday afternoon after lunch, so I just want to make sure that everybody's awake. As Eric said, I am on the AICP Commission for Region 3, and last year I became a member of the exam committee, and this year I am chairing the exam committee. So that's been pretty exciting for me, learning the process of what goes into preparing the exam, and in particular, the process of keeping it fresh and relevant and maintaining the integrity of the exam. So that's the charge of our committee. And we go through a refresh process that is regular and periodic, and a larger update process, and that just happened not very long ago with the new questions coming in, trying to clean up the exam from old questions that came in formats that were not optimal, I would say. So that's been part of our charge in the refresh process. And we're at this point going to be pre-testing some of those questions to see how they do. If the questions do well, then they go into the actual exam as exam questions in the following cycle. But we're kind of in this process right now. So that's something that I just wanted to mention. I'm not going to go into every step of what the refresh process is, but I just wanted to give you a little taste of what that is, because I think even for me, before I joined the commission and I came on board, it was a little bit of a mystery. And the questions sometimes seem like they were there forever, and sometimes I think they were. I think we're trying to be a lot more careful now about keeping it up to date, and so I'm excited to be part of that process. Just wanted to tell you a little bit. I guess everybody is registered to take the exam here. Is that correct? Okay. I became an AICP planner 22 years ago. It was a very different exam. It was a very different study process, frankly. I'm not going to tell you how I studied, because you may not like it. You may not like it either. But I have found in the experience of other people that I see studying for the exam that working with study groups seems to work really well. I'm not suggesting that's the best way. You have to find the best way for you to learn what you need to learn. But for me, it was really important at the time that I decided to take the exam. I wasn't too far into my career. I was in a hurry to get my AICP certification because I really felt that it would give me that edge. It would verify my knowledge and expertise, and it really did help me. And as I've moved through the different stages of my career, the value of the AICP credential for me has stayed that way, but also changed, meaning because it has become more about the ethical code, the ability to say to someone who's asking me to do something that maybe is a little dubious, I'm sorry, but I am a professional who abides by this code, and I really cannot do that. And also, a lot of other benefits. The networking that I do when I come to these conferences to get credits is absolutely amazing, and I hope you all have been taking advantage of that. And for those of you who are young planners, as you move through your career, you really will see how important that is. And perhaps last and not least, AICP has given me an opportunity to serve the organization, become a commissioner on the AICP Commission, and I hope eventually to become a fellow of the College of Fellows. And this is something that when one is, sort of starting out, is so vague that you cannot even imagine that happening, but it is out there. It's something, and you go through your career and you're looking at all your accomplishments as a planner who is AICP certified, and this is out there for you to get recognition for those accomplishments. So with that, all that said, I'm sure I don't have to tell you there's a lot of information about the credential on the APA website. We have our own page, AICP page, and we have gone through a great marketing effort, which is ongoing, to make sure that not only our planners, but also their employers and the community at large understand what the value of AICP is. There are some really wonderful resources on that page. There's a video that was put together very recently. Our immediate AICP past president just had a piece that came out, was it in planning recently, right? It was in planning, and if you read it by Glenn Larson, it really is amazing, and you can take it to your employers and use those points to make your case. And I'm not going to take any more of your time. I hope you are inspired to, as you study. I know this is sort of like, oh my God, I have to study for an exam, but it's worth it. And I wish everyone luck, and I know your training with these gentlemen is going to be great. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. So first, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the application and registration process for individuals who may not be registered for the exam, and then I'll turn it over to Trevor and Devin to jump into the exam prep portion. So first, with our traditional path to AICP, you gain your education, you gain your planning experience, apply for certification. Once approved, you can then study for and pass the exam. After passing the exam, of course, you become an AICP member. For individuals interested in the candidate path, I have a URL on the screen here. It switches up the steps, but all the requirements stay the same. And that program is currently for Planning Accreditation Board approved students and graduates. Another overview of the paths to AICP. So the eligibility requirements, it's a sliding scale. If you do have a master's from a PAB program, you have to verify 2 years of experience. A bachelor's from a PAB, it's 3 years. A graduate degree in planning that is not PAB, 3 years. And then all other degrees are 4 years of experience. If you have a lot of planning experience or no college degree, then you can verify 8 years to meet the requirements. There's a variety of planning experience that is accepted in the application. One great way to do this is to go through our application guide and look at the criteria requirements and see how it matches up to your current experience. We do accept part-time experience, so if half of your work is spent on architecture, for instance, the other time on planning, then you'll just prorate your experience. So 4 years at part-time would actually equal 2 years of planning experience. Internship experience does count so long as it's not required by your program. The education and work experience do need to be separate. And of course, there is some non-traditional experience that can be accepted as well. So when you do apply for certification, you only need to include the jobs needed to meet the minimum requirements. If you have 20 years of experience, you're welcome to include as much as you'd like, but really you just need to meet that 2, 3, 4, or 8 years. You also need to include all the positions that you do reference in your essays. And of course, provide the positions for which you can provide the strongest responses. Some general application tips, definitely go through the AICP Guide Part 1. It goes through the whole certification application process. This is the guide where you'll find information on the criteria requirements. There's also a checklist at the end that's very helpful when you're drafting your essays. The first week of each application window is called our early bird window. The benefits to this is that you'll find out much sooner if you're approved. However, if your essays are denied by the peer reviewers, you'll get another chance to submit them within the same window to sit for the following exam. Always proofread your responses. You can work them out in a Word document and just copy paste them into the application. Feel free to ask your coworker to look them over for you. Of course, save all of your essays in a Word document and keep copies of your verification documents. The employment verification letter, we do have a sample on our website. I always encourage people to draft their own letter to give to their employer or previous employer to make it a little easier for them to send it back to you. You want to double check that all the information in there is correct, including employment dates. And if you do have a unique circumstance, maybe the employer is no longer in business, always feel free to reach out to us. What we usually suggest you do is you just draft your own letter and include an explanation why you were drafting it. Some tips about the education process. You can verify your education through a notarized copy of your diploma, just a PDF of your official transcripts, or you can get a letter from the school dean, registrar, or any official at your program. Typically, the transcripts pretty much seem to be the easiest way to go about this. Now, applications can be marked as incomplete if the information is incorrect. You can avoid that by including all of the correct documents when you do submit your application. And of course, all of this is uploaded when you submit your application. Some information about the criteria responses. General information, once again, all this is in the AICP guide. There's some do's and don'ts to help you draft your essays. The essays have to be between 250 and 500 words. You'll speak in the first person, and you'll be talking about your experience, not your team's experience. And you'll refrain from using bolded lists or writing in incomplete sentences. The reviewers do base their information on the essays, and of course, having a clearly written out essays helps them review them more quickly. Now, this is an overview of the 3 criteria. I'm not going to go into details about these. We have pages 15 through 20 in the application guide. We go into a lot of detail about what the reviewers are looking for these. We're always looking ways to clarify the information, so there will be a new application guide out pretty soon with updated information about improved descriptions and information like that. After your application is approved, that's when you're eligible to sit for the exam. Once you're approved for 3 years or 6 exam cycles. You must register your intent to sit for the exam within a registration window. A couple slides later, I do show what those windows are. We do allow applicants to transfer from one cycle to the next, and there's a $100 fee included with that. All of the details about the application and registration windows are included on this URL right here. If your application is denied, we do provide you detailed information on why that did occur. Once again, early bird applicants, you'll have a chance to resubmit with a new deadline. We do strongly encourage you to follow the guidance in the denial statement. And when you do resubmit, make sure you've addressed all the reasons that the peer reviewers touched on. A quick overview of the exam window schedule. You apply in December. The review process happens through December and April. That's also when you can register for the exam. Late April, transfer deadline occurs, and then in May, the exam takes place. Similar for June, you apply in June, you'll be able to take the exam in November, and then late October is when that registration deadline does occur. All the information about the registration process is included in the AICP Guide Part 2, Taking the Exam. Some dates for the May exam. And the exam windows are 2 weeks. And then important dates for the November exam window. There are some fees associated with the process. For the traditional path, it is $70 to apply. The exam fee is $425. The application resubmission fee, either within that window if you're an early bird denied candidate, or the following window, is $70, and the transfer fee is $100. Our PDOs and chapters do provide reduced fee scholarships, so if you find you're having some difficulty paying for it, please reach out to them to learn more about that. Each chapter is allotted a certain amount, and there's always a few extra left over, so please reach out to them. The exam score is available immediately after you finish the exam, and you'll have access to it through this URL. To access it here, you'll use your confirmation number and your last name. Scores are reported on a scale of 25 to 75, with 55 as the passing score. Once again, available assistance, you can reach out to your PDOs, your chapters, and your sections. They can help you provide some feedback about your application. They can definitely have a lot of information about exam prep. Some of them do set up trainings and group classes that you can get involved with. So for more information, please go to planning.org/chapters for the information. So once again, we actually will hold questions until the very end after Devin and Trevor go through their the exam prep portion. You can access these guides at this URL, and for today's presentation, you can get it through this URL at the bottom, planning.org/media/document 9174786. I wish it could be a little more clever, but that's how we got it here. You'll find this PowerPoint and also a link to the PowerPoint that Devin and Trevor are going to deliver next. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. Oh yeah, here's a clicker as well.
Awesome. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending today's session. We're excited once again to be here. Devin and I have been doing this for almost a decade at the APA National Conference, so thank you, Eric, and the APA for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. We're going to quickly go through here. I imagine a lot of you are professional development officers. Can you raise your hand if you're a PDO? Okay, so you've probably done this same training and realize how hard it is to do something like this in about 2.5 hours, but we're going to try our best. The PDF that is available as part of this session, we typically give in an 8-hour session, so we're going to go through stuff as quick as we can to make sure we cover all the sections. But take a look at that PDF. If you have any questions or if you felt we skipped over something that you want to talk to us about, please just email us. We'd be more than happy to talk to you. So I'm going to just go through the outline really quickly here. We're going to give a quick overview about ourselves, our experience. We're going to talk about planningprep.com, which is a free website that Devin and I created back in 2002 when I had an amazing mullet. And then the third section is we're going to spend some time talking about how to prepare for the exam. We feel that the more we give this course, this is actually becoming more and more important to us, we think, is to get people in the right mindset of how to prepare for the examination, what types of questions to look for, because if you're not ready for the types of questions that you would get, it doesn't even really matter if you know the answer or not. You might be just confused from the get-go. So we want to spend a couple minutes about that. The bulk of this session will be talking about the content review, and we've structured it as these different sections that are in the AICP guide for the structure of the exam, and then wrap up with a brief conclusion and any questions that you may have. A little bit about myself. Eric already gave a good introduction. Thanks, Eric. I just think it's important to note that I have 20 years of public and private sector planning experience. I'm the Illinois Professional Development Officer. I've worked in various municipalities, including the regional planning agency outside of Chicago, and now I'm at the city of Aurora, where it's the longest title I've ever had, Director of Development Strategy and Facilitation. I don't really know what it means, but they pay me, so I'm happy about that. And I'll turn over to Devin if you want to say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, I work in the private sector. I run a consulting firm. We work all over the country on a bunch of different types of projects. And yeah, I'm born and raised in Canada, became a citizen in 2018, and I'm also an adjunct lecturer at the University of Illinois. I run an urban design studio.
Okay, great. Okay, so just a quick discussion here about planningprep.com. It's a free site. It was created in 2002. Right now, we're well over 1,000 questions and 7 practice exams. When Devin and I were studying for the exam back in 2001, we promised ourselves if we passed the exam that we would create a better tool, a better site. Back then, it was just paper copies of paper. You'd go through the exam questions, and it would say the answer is C, and you'd be like, it can't be C, this has got to be a typo. So, and if you remember back to this time, this was, even before Google, so we did a lot of research on trying to find out answers, putting them on the website. But I think that the greatest thing for us is that it allows you to see how you're doing by category of question. So when you're doing a practice exam, if you find that you're doing really well in history, maybe you don't have to spend as much time on history. If you're doing not so well in law, for example, that's probably a good indication that you should spend some more time on focusing on law. As you prepare for the exam, you're going to quickly realize that prioritization is key, and the quicker that you can get to those questions that you're not familiar with, the better. I think a lot of us, when we're studying, if there's a question or a topic that we're really good at, that's a lot of fun. We'll study that all day, but make sure that you move off from those and maybe tackle the ones that aren't so familiar to you. And then let's see here. This is just a screenshot of the Planning Prep homepage. You can see we're up to almost 1,700 questions and 12 practice exams. The Planning Prep website won the 2007 Gold Award in the Illinois chapter. We've had thousands of members all over the world, and we continue to teach this course throughout the country. You can see we've listed some of the chapters here. I'm seeing right in the front Richard from Texas, so good to see a lot of familiar faces. And like I said, we've been doing this since 2012 at the National Planning Conferences, and then you might hear myself on a few of the training webinars that are on the APA's website. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits to becoming AICP. Sylvia at the beginning mentioned some ones that are very important to her. It makes you stand out from the crowd. It shows that you follow a code of ethics. It shows others that you're a professional. On this slide, we also wanted to show that the APA has done a survey, and AICP members traditionally make more money than non-AICP members. So that's something I just wanted to point out as we jump into it. The structure of the exam. The purpose of the exam is to test your knowledge and skills relative to the practice of planning, and it covers a lot of different questions and materials. If you look around the room, or if you talk to people here at the conference, or even if you just look at the program guide, I think we all know how many different fields of planning there are. And I think that's why the exam is actually, I would say, challenging to a lot of people, because there's so many different types of questions, so many fields that they want to make sure they try to cover. So as you prepare, make sure that you try to keep in mind all the different types of planning that is out there. And it tests how you think as a planner. It's going to ask you questions that, and we have a few slides where we talk about it, where you have to know what the best answer is. There's going to be some questions where you could say, oh, it could be A. You know what, it could also be B. It won't be C and D, but now you have to pick between A and B, and that's where it gets really stressful. And you have to really think as a planner, okay, what would I do as a planner who's following the code of ethics, for example, which is the best answer? So just an example, too, of the types of questions that you might see. There's questions that are not just the best answer, but it may be answer 1 and 2, answer 1, 2, 3, or maybe 1, 3, and 4. So it's there's several questions like this where you're going to have to think about, okay, which ones are actually the correct ones, and make sure you make the right selection. These type of questions also on the exam remind us of the cognitive reflection test. I'm going to just call it the CRT. That's a lot easier to say. It was designed to assess a specific cognitive ability, and it assesses individuals' ability to suppress an intuitive and spontaneous response in favor of a reflective and more deliberate correct answer. So here's just an example. You will not expect to see these questions on the exam, but just wanted to throw 2 or 3 up here so you can be familiar with the type of questions that might make you really want to think. So a bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1, more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? 10 cents, 5 cents, 15 cents, or $1? Yes? Oh,
No.
yep.
5 cents.
5 cents, right. Okay. If
But
anybody-
your quick response is 10 cents, and that's sort of take a step back to sort of think through. There's a lot of these types of questions on the exam. Is it all math? No,
No,
there's not a lot
no.
of math.
No, and oh, go ahead, Dev.
No, just the sort of the CRT is just a 3-question test that they run to compare colleges against, and it just sort of rejecting that initial knee-jerk response and take a quick second to kind of think about it. So it's not always as easy as it seems. There's going to be some slam dunks, Daniel Burnham, but there's going to be some other ones that just take a quick pause, reread the question.
Okay. This question here, if it takes 5 machines 5 minutes to make 5 widgets, how long would it take 100 machines to make 100 widgets? 1 hour, 100 minutes, 25 minutes, or 5 minutes? Bless you. Yes, again,
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Great. And then this is the last one, I promise, then we'll move on. In a lake, there's a patch of lily pads every day. The patch doubles in size. If it takes 48 days for the patch to cover the entire lake, how long would it take for the patch to cover half of the lake? 12 days, 24 days, 31 days, or 47 days? 47 days?
Yeah, 47.
47 days. Okay. And then I actually like this question a lot. Which of these numbers is greater than 0? -1, 0, 1, or 2? What would the APA say is the best answer? 2. So the best answer is number 2.
No,
What? Oh,
D.
sorry. Oh, my
I
God.
said D.
Oh, sorry. D. D.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just seeing if anybody was paying attention, so. Okay, and then this will be on the exam. Okay. Okay, the structure of the exam, 170 multiple choice questions, 20 of which are pretest and do not count towards the final score. There's 2 main areas, knowledge, 40%, and skills, 60%. You'll have 4 hours to complete the exam, 3.5 hours for the questions, and a half-hour tutorial. And you will receive an official result immediately. Okay, the AICP exam outline. This is provided on the APA's website. The fundamental planning knowledge, 25%, plan making implementation, 30%, areas of practice, 30%. A new category is the leadership, administration, and management, which is 5%. And then the last one is the code of ethics and professional conduct. And even though they say it's 10% of the exam outline, as Devin says when he gets to his section, it's actually going to feel like it's 90% of the exam. So the reason for that is a lot of these questions are scenario-based. It takes a lot of paragraphs to set up the scenario. It's going to take you time to read them, and then also try to really think about what is the best question, or sorry, the best answer. Eric already touched on this, so I won't spend too much time, but the computer-based exam, there's 2 12-day windows. There's 2 different exams administered each time. I think it's important to say that if you take the exam in the spring and do it again in the fall, the way the system's set up, you'll have different questions, so it's not the same exam, so be prepared for that. How many of you are planning to take it this spring? Okay, great. And then in the fall, obviously, for the remainder? Okay, great. There's also questions on here, and Devin already talked about Burnham, but we typically call those equator questions. They're typically on every exam, and they really test your basic fundamental knowledge. It's usually a Burnham question or the 1909 Plan of Chicago. We always say if you want to do a drinking game, that Burnham is, if every time Burnham is said, you'd be feeling pretty good. The exam score, the scores are reported on a scale of 25 to 75, with 55 considered the passing score. I'm going to briefly talk about some common myths. Even though the APA has done a really good job of creating a recommended reading list, and it seems to improve every year, there isn't one book. There's not one magical book that you should study. that can prepare you completely for the exam, nor is there one website or other tool. I think it's a combination of everything you can get your hands on and your own work experience. It's important to note that the APA always wants to hit home that this isn't the end of the certification process, that becoming an AICP professional when you complete the exam and pass it is actually thought of more of as the beginning. The other myth is that you can prepare by memorizing information. That's true if that's the only thing you do for the exam. However, we do feel that memorization, especially for history, theory, and law, is crucial because you can then fly through those questions a lot faster. And there's a lot of those random questions, especially from history, that you can memorize without too much trouble. And that'll really help you spend more time on the ethics questions. As I talked about, the AICP exam questions are drawn on a number of different topics. The APA has done a great job with their reading list. And a lot of the reading list now is either free or available online, which is huge. When we were studying for the exam back in the day, you had to buy very expensive books that, honestly, I maybe read once, if that, really. But I think it's also important to mention that as PDO of the Illinois chapter, a lot of people that fail the exam, when I talk to them, I feel like they get too much into the detail. They either read the entire book, where they don't have to. They may, instead of just knowing that a bioswale is good for the environment, it's best management practices, you use it for stormwater, they get into the nitty-gritty of how much percentage of clay should be used in a bioswale, what should the slopes be. You know, that I'm using that as an example. That is way too much in the weeds, no pun intended. Try and keep a higher altitude, a higher level, and you'll be okay. That'll also allow you to cover more of the topic areas than to just focusing on one single thing. Here's some of the books that we strongly recommend. These are on the guidelines, but we really like The Practice of Local Government, which was always called the Green Bible. When it was updated in 2009, they changed the cover to yellow. So I guess it's maybe the Yellow Bible now, but that's one of those resources that is found in a lot of different planning companies or municipalities. Those are those big, thick books that are always on your bookshelf. But if you really want to find out more information, those are some good resources. We've also got some examples of some ethics on here. And then on the far right is the Planning and Urban Design Standards, which we really, really like. It came out in 2006 already. Time's flying by. But that's a really good book, especially for urban design information. And then I wanted to talk briefly about the APA. They recently launched a refreshed exam prep page on its website. Eric, when did that come out? Was it a couple months ago or few weeks ago, a few months ago? Fantastic information, and it seems like every time I go on the website, more and more information is going on there, so thank you, Eric, to you and your team. This is the link, but obviously you just go on the APA website and go to their planning prep site, and they've got multiple steps here that I just want to quickly go through. Step number one is to contact your chapter or professional development officer. Great resource. I know for myself in Illinois, people use me as a great resource to form study groups. I can also help them with information. Some planners reach out to me as they're going through the actual application to be able to sit down for the exam. I'm very cautious to give too much information on that because I don't want to be responsible if they don't even get qualified to get selected. But I just give general advice to make sure that they keep it higher altitude and make sure that they really talk about the benefits of planning on whatever project they describe. I also think here that they're an excellent starting point in terms of tips or techniques to help you study. PDOs are a fantastic resource. Step number two is to map your study. Review the exam content online to understand the scope of the exam and areas of which you should focus. That's another thing the APA added with this new exam refresh is this new, more detailed exam content where they not only tell you the category, but in brackets, the subcategories. So that really gives you an idea of the types of questions you are likely to expect on the exam. I'm doing a great job already. Look, they're leaving. Balance your exam prep according to the percentage for each category. For example, 10% of the exam is the leadership and administration part. So that means you're only likely to see a handful of questions on that, so don't get really bogged down on that section, for example. Study over multiple months. We always say 2 to 3 months is a good idea. Some people learn faster. We've all have that annoying friend who doesn't even study, who walks in and passes it anyways, but that's very important to create a study plan to make sure that you know what you have to study and when as well, to make sure that you can continue to prioritize. Step number 3, select a comprehensive preparation product. There's multiple resources out there. I've mentioned Planning Prep, but there's a lot of different websites that are listed on the APA. A lot of reading materials, a lot of training courses online, and also in your own states, so please take advantage of those. And here's a list here of the online resources. The PAS reports are fantastic. If you really want to learn about a specific topic area, for example, the PAS reports are amazing, as are the policy guides. Be familiar with the Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. As Devin talks about that when we get to that section, you're going to have to memorize that code and be familiar with everything on those pages. So familiarize yourself with taking an exam as well. Go online, take some practice exams. The APA has their own, the AICP Exam Illustrative Questions, which is also a fantastic resource. And just get back into the mindset of taking an exam again like this, where they're all multiple choice, and be familiar with those types of questions that are going to try to feel like they're tricking you, but really take your time and think about them. So just some final additional prep strategies. We advise you to start studying for the exam early, focus on your weak areas, try to join a study group. I know everybody learns differently, but I think there's a lot of success for those who join study groups, especially if you live in an area that maybe is further away from others that are preparing for the exam, that an online study group is a great resource. Think in terms of a national perspective. I'm sure all of you know your sign ordinance in your municipality, or what your planning process is for projects as they come before you in your town. You may do things a little differently. The APA wants you to just think in a national perspective. So be familiar with what a typical planning department does, what a typical process is, and all these resources really hit home what those typical resources are and perspectives. And then make sure you know where the test center is. I know it seems funny, but that'll be one less thing you have to worry about the day of. Make sure that you know where your testing center is. Eric also talked about this, the candidate pilot program. And so I won't go over this in too much detail, but basically it flips it where you can actually take the exam before you actually get your experience. And then Eric talked about this. The certification maintenance program, it's important to keep in mind that you're required to get 32 CM credits within the 2-year reporting period after you pass the exam. Currently, it's a minimum of 1.5 credits for ethics and law, and that you can carry a maximum of 16 credits from one reporting period to the other. AICP members who do not meet the CM requirements within 4 years will lose their AICP certification and will be obliged to seek recertification, which basically means have to take the exam again, and we don't want to do that.